You are probably wasting months of your life every year. And the worst part is that you don't even notice that you're doing it. Because the problem is not that you're lazy or unmotivated, is that you keep believing that a future version of yourself will somehow be more disciplined, more motivated, and more ready than you are today. And trust me, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't fall into this same trap and let it cripple my progress towards my goals. But I'm telling you that once you realize what is actually holding you back, you start to see the real cause of your procrastination. Let me explain. You set a specific date and time to work towards a goal, whether it's going to the gym, studying, working on an online business, or even just going for a run. But as that time gets closer and closer, you somehow always find something else to do. Maybe you reply to a message, maybe you do some chores, maybe you tell yourself you relax for a bit. It doesn't really matter what you do, as long as it's anything but the thing you plan to get done. So you end up putting it off until the evening, but in the evening, your brain is literally hardwired to relax once the sun goes down, because you do productive things during the day. So now it's even harder to imagine yourself doing the thing you plan to do. Inevitably, you scroll social media, consume content, or play video games. And that brings us to today's issue, which is believing that your future self will wake up to be different than you are today, and that tomorrow, at some specific time, you'll finally do the work that you should have done today. If I say it like that, then it's pretty easy to see that this is just some universal cope, because convincing yourself that you'll be different tomorrow is way easier than convincing yourself that you'll be different today. So you get stuck in this loop where you somehow convince yourself to waste the entire day just to leave everything for tomorrow. And let me tell you, that even though you think you are just some elite level procrastinator, I don't think this is procrastination. And I don't want to make this into some motivational video where I tell you to lock in and get it together, but I want to explain what's happening on a conceptual level. So let me start off with the first layer. Your brain's reward system is designed to chase dopamine. We've all heard this one before. So we know the easy dopamine stuff like scrolling, watching TV, and gaming are naturally addictive. But even when you procrastinate, most of the time you don't jump straight to the bad habits. You'd feel too much like a loser if you knowingly just gave up on your plan for today. So first you need to give yourself a reason for why it would be okay to put it off. And this is what I want to label as the bridging thought. This would be wanting to relax after a hard day at work, or deciding to eat and then watching something while you eat, or maybe even lying down on your bed to scroll because you're tired. The bridging thought acts as a reason to waste a little bit of time, but actually, it's a reason to put yourself in a state of raised dopamine. And this is where I want to add another layer. It's a concept I like to call dopamine momentum. And to explain it in a very easy way, once you raise your dopamine above your baseline, your brain is now further away from the low dopamine task than before, which means it's now harder for your brain to close that gap and switch tasks. And now that you're at that raised level, the only thing you want to switch to are other high dopamine activities, hence why I call it dopamine momentum. So the cycle is pretty much that you come home, you use a bridging thought to raise your dopamine, and then you enter dopamine momentum until the evening, where you then put off the work until tomorrow. So what's the solution to this continuous loop? Well, to start off, let's ask why the bridging thought even happens in the first place. It's because of how your brain will weigh the potential reward it could get from both paths. Let me explain that a little further. Within your memories, your brain has created these reference points. So it has all the easy dopamine habits listed as the fastest way you can get that dopamine hit for minimal effort. But compared to that ambitious goal that you have, your brain has a small amount of reference to how it feels to accomplish that long-term goal. So when your brain has to choose between instant dopamine and some uncertain reward in the future, your brain starts creating ways for you to avoid the uncertain investment and keep getting rewarded instantly instead. And this also explains why athletes and successful people find it way easier to do hard work. It's not because they've mastered the art of discipline or they're just built different. It's because they have very clear reference points, that if they do this hard work, they might win a world championship or they will build another successful business. And because they've reinforced that the consistent hard work has produced results before, it's much easier to believe that they can do it again. So all you need to do is create that reference point. And here is where I want to talk about my own experience, because to build the reference point, I believe that it came from repeating the process again and again until it got easier and easier to do. That even if you didn't like it, you'd eventually make it a part of your routine and then you wouldn't think twice about doing it. In hindsight, it's easy to see what the potential pitfalls may be, but after following this line of logic, I came to the great idea of creating this 1 week plan for myself, where I'd sit down for a 3-hour work block every day. Because once I had built that reference point of being able to sit down and focus for a set time every day, I would just be able to keep going using that momentum. So on day one, when I had reached the time I set for myself, I sat down and I was excited because I was finally committing to something and seriously working on it. I downloaded a course for YouTube automation because it's a business model that is faceless and voiceless while also having a high income potential, which is the perfect low risk setup. During my first 3 hours, I steadily moved through the course. It was a little tedious, but felt good to complete it nonetheless. During my next 3-hour session, I kept following the course, and a few steps required some paid subscriptions. If I was to get the money back in the future though, then I guess it doesn't really matter. On day 4 and 5, I started to realize that to even guarantee any profit, I would need to continue doing a tedious process for an indefinite amount of time. For day 6, my 3 hours felt like 6 because I no longer enjoyed what I was doing and I felt drained by having to do this every single day for 3 hours. This continued until the week was finally over, and honestly, managing to stick it out for 21 hours total was no easy task. So I can't say it was a complete failure, but I couldn't bring myself to continue working either. I found that now that I wasn't forcing myself to stick to a set plan, I could give myself a break and pick it up again in a few days. And over these next few days, I fell back into the loop of leaving it to the evening, getting sleepy, and then leaving it to the next morning, where every day it started to feel like I just never had enough time available to do a big work block. Even though I knew it was the productive work I should be doing, I always had this sinking feeling in my chest every time I thought about it, and avoiding it gave me a sense of relief because working on that business model had been so draining that even if I earned money, I still never felt like doing it. And this is where, after thinking about my overall experience and seeing where I went wrong, I eventually realized the various problems with my method. And whether for you this would be trying to start exercising, making a study routine, or starting an online business like me, I think a lot of people have the same problems that I do, is that all that social media and scrolling and gaming isn't just a big reference point in my mind. It has also conditioned me to expect quick results from a momentary effort. So when I use that same mindset to sit down and work on my goal, I'm just trying to get progress as quickly as possible, because quicker means more efficient, and more efficient is better. So every time I finally get enough motivation to sit down and do some productive work, I always go all out and try to do as much as possible. But let's be real, I'm never going to reach the end result with just one good session, or even 7 good sessions, no matter how efficient I am. It 100% of the time will require me to put in a sustained effort over many, many days. When I think about 3 hours every single day for months and months, it gives me that odd feeling of I don't really feel like doing all that. Even when I know that the end result is something that I actually want, and that brings me to my next realization, is that the speed of your progress does not matter if it's not sustainable. If you go on a run every day for a month, but now you hate it and never do it again, then what was the point? If you do the most optimal workout for 3 months, but then you end up quitting the gym, then what was the point? If you invest 30 hours into studying just to fall behind on homework in the future, then what was the point? It feels good to make fast progress, but something that we haven't gotten comfortable with accepting is that goals will take time. And this is a belief that is holding a lot of us back, which is as soon as we hear that something may take months or even a year or two to get the end result, we instantly say that it isn't worth it because it'll take too long. But the reality is that time will continue, and those years that you don't want to waste will be wasted anyways if you don't do something with them. And the stuff that actually changes your life will take a year or more to get, because if it could be done in 1 month, then everyone would have done it. So how can we make it easier to keep doing that difficult thing without quitting because we end up just hating it? The solution I found is how you build the association you have with your goal. If you feel like the standards you set for yourself are far too high, then you'll naturally build a negative association, which in turn makes you more likely to quit it. So for me, instead of forcing myself to work to some massive standard of 3 hours, I started by sitting down and setting a timer for just 15 minutes. After that, I let myself get back to doing whatever the hell I wanted to. And for those 15 minutes, I held myself to almost no expectations. And even if that sounds a little stupid, to open the laptop and do 15 minutes and then stop, think about it like doing 0 minutes consistently to now doing 15 minutes consistently. And after just a few days, the association I had with the work I wanted to do became a lot more positive, because now I had lowered the barrier for entry. Before, I kept avoiding the work because I knew that it was 3 hours of my time as soon as I started, and now that I had made it a smaller commitment, I just had to pause the game, do a quick 15 minutes, and then unpause it and keep playing. So effectively, make the work easier to do, make it more manageable. Don't make it feel like such a pain, because at the end of the day, it's better to do a 40% effort for 3 years than it is to do a 100% effort for 3 months, because your progress relies on you being able to do it for a long time. So you have to prioritize the association you have with it more than the amount of progress you are currently making. And another thing I've implemented myself is making the work more enjoyable for yourself. And as a prime example, the video you have been watching this entire time is me playing Minecraft. This was after thinking about how I could achieve my goal while making it as sustainable as possible. And what you'll notice is that there is always another way to reach your desired goal. For me right now, I decided to choose something that is fun, rather than something annoying. So to record this footage, I just had to log onto a world and play Minecraft. I also had to script this video, and I don't use AI for my scripts because it never really sounds right, so I decided to write it myself. And initially, I set a goal to script for just 15 minutes. After a while, I realized I actually enjoy writing about these ideas and concepts. And now that I had built a reference point that this wasn't some difficult and annoying task that I wanted to avoid, it became way easier to start doing it today rather than tomorrow. And the key takeaway here is that you need to make your method more enjoyable so it can be more sustainable. For example, I see a big following around hypertrophy-based training in the gym, which if you don't know is optimizing for the size of your muscles through your training. This makes sense because it's the most efficient way to get your dream physique. But it just so happens that hypertrophy training can have some of the most draining and convoluted exercises. So when you go to the gym, don't do the optimal exercises that make you feel dead afterwards. Do exercises that you enjoy because I promise you'll stay in the gym longer. And if you quit before you make any real progress, then what was the point? When you sit down to do homework, listen to some music and get something to eat. To make it feel less focused and stressed, start with 20 minutes at a time and do that 3 times with breaks. That way, the barrier for entry is low and now it's more enjoyable. And for me, this is when I finally started seeing some real progress. Not because I suddenly became a different person or that I had obtained the skill of discipline, but by understanding the cycle of why I kept leaving it to the next day, and then finding solutions to each of the problems in that circuit. Many people have habits that raise our dopamine and make it hard to switch to a low dopamine task. So make the task have a lower barrier for entry, and then there won't be such a resistance when you try to do it. Bridging thoughts are a way for your brain to trick you into putting things off and enter dopamine momentum. So with that knowledge, you can catch yourself doing it next time it happens. Don't make your task some crazy long session where you get a bunch of things done all at once. Make it easy and do 15 minutes. And once you have that positive association, you can progressively lengthen the time you put in. Because consistency isn't a skill, but a muscle you have to train. Remember that your long-term goals inevitably will take time, so aim to make it sustainable rather than optimized for quick progress. There is always a better method to reach your goals if you consider the more enjoyable ways to get there, rather than always choosing the fastest method. And most importantly, for the title of this video, is that the person you think is going to wake up tomorrow and do your unfinished work is actually just a few hours older than you are right now. How much can you really change as a person while you're asleep? Anyways, thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and I hope I helped you think a little different. See ya.